Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers, and this is Biblical Insights. In our video today, we're going to be talking about what is the most important thing. Now, that's an interesting question, and I think people tend at times to think about what is most important. And you get lots of different answers, depending on who you ask. Some people would say the most important thing there is to be loved. Or to love somebody. Others would say, well, the most important thing is, your family, and that is an important thing. Others would say the most important thing is being happy. Do what makes you happy. And others might say kind of the same thing, but they might say it in terms of, doing what you want to do. There's all sorts of different answers out there about what is the most important thing. So I thought in our video today, we would talk about that. And the interesting thing is that on a couple of different occasions during Jesus' ministry, he was asked that question: what's the most important thing there is? Now, when he was asked it, in his cultural context, the ancient Jewish context, the question was, what is the greatest commandment? You see, because from their point of view, the commands given by God were the most important things there were. And so of all of the commandments that were given, and there were lots of them, in fact, the old law, the Mosaic law, contained a total of about 613 commands. People think about 10 because they're aware of the 10 commandments, but that was just the basic foundational stuff, the first 10 basically, you might say. But there were 603 others, so it was a pretty big law, and the Jews had questions about, well, of all of those commandments, which one is the most important? Which one is the greatest commandment of all? That's what they asked, and so a couple of times in his ministry, Jesus was asked that question. Well, what did he say? What was Jesus' answer about what is the greatest commandment, or what is the most important thing? So we're going to read a brief text about that from Matthew 22. I'll be reading out of the Simplified New Testament Study Bible, which is my own translation. But if you're reading it out of some other translation, that's just fine. The wording will be a little differently, but when you pay attention, when you look close, it's going to say the same thing. So beginning with verse 34. Now, this is during the last few days of Jesus' ministry, and the Jewish religious leaders, don't like him. They're not happy with him, and they're trying to trip him up. They're trying to find ways to get him to make a mistake or to say something wrong that they can hold against him. And so that's what this story begins with. It says, the Pharisees heard that the Sadducees had not been able to trap Jesus, so they decided to try again. One of the experts of the law asked him a question, hoping Jesus would make a mistake. He said, "Teacher, what is the most important law God has given us?" Jesus said, "You must love God completely with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. This is the most important thing there is. And the second most important thing is to love other people as much as you love yourself. All of God's other laws are based on these two." Wow, that's a pretty important text, isn't it? If all of the other laws that God gave are based upon or rooted in or built on the idea that the most important thing is loving God completely, and the second most important is loving others as much as you love yourself, that's really saying something. Those two ideas then are quite literally the most important things out there. So let's think a few moments about those two things. What does it mean that we are to love God completely, love God with all of our heart, our soul, and our mind? What does that mean? Well, I think Jesus is basically trying to sum up what we might call the totality of the person. You're a physical being, You have a body that has needs and all that, but the real you is the inner self, the part of you which thinks, which analyzes, which weighs alternatives. What should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? You see, and then makes decisions and decides, and there's a will involved. I will do this or I will not do that. That sort of thing. So the part of you that thinks and wills and decides and chooses, that's the real you. And when the body dies and is buried, or whatever, your people do with dead bodies, when the body dies, you continue to live. The real you, your mind. Some people prefer to call it heart or soul or spirit, whatever. I like the word mind, okay? But that continues on. You continue on as an individuated self who can think and make decisions and determine, okay? And that will live forever. That will never cease to exist. You will always exist. And when Jesus says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, he's saying, everything about you, your totality of being, everything that is you, God needs to come first. You need to love him more than anything else. That's what that means. The greatest commandment, the most important thing there is that you love God with your entire being more than you love anything else. Now, for some people, that's really hard to do, because for some people, what they love more than anything else is themselves. That's just the truth. Some people are so self-absorbed and narcissistic that everything is about them, and nothing is more important to them than themselves and what they want and what they think and what they desire. And everything about their lives is about getting what they want and having what they desire and doing what they want, because there's nothing more important to them than themselves. Well, that's really sad. And as parents raise children, they need to try to help those children understand that they are not the most important. That there are plenty of other things that are more important than an individual self. I'm important to me. I'm important to my wife. But there are the things that are more important to me. There are things that are more important to my wife than me. And there are things that are more important to me than my wife. There's only one, but there is something else. What? God. God is more important. The most important thing in your life should be God. You should love God more than anything else. See, some people will tell you, oh, family is the most important thing. No, it's not. It's not. Family's not the most important thing. Family can't save your soul. Your family didn't die on a cross for you so that your sins could be forgiven. The most important thing is God, not your family. Some people, especially women, they say, well, children, my children are the most important thing to me. Nothing's more important to me than children. Well, that's wrong. And that's a foolish idea. God is more important than your children, and God should be more important to you than your children. In fact, the order should go God, spouse, then children. Children are not the most important thing. Children grow up and leave. Okay, that's what they do, and that's what they're supposed to do. There's nothing wrong with that. They're supposed to grow up and get married and leave and go off and have their own family, and then their kids will do the same thing, and so forth and so on. Children are not the most important thing. And your spouse is not the most important thing, and you're not the most important thing. God is the most important thing. And the most important thing you can do is to love God completely. Put him first in your life. Think about him first. When you're trying to make a decision, always ask, what would God want me to do? When you don't know what to do, don't go to somebody else and ask advice. Go to God and ask his advice. His opinion should be the one you're concerned about. His advice should be the one that you seek out. You see, put God first. That's number one. Then Jesus tossed in a freebie. The expert in the law didn't say what's the most important and what's the second most important. He didn't do that. He just said what's the most important thing. Jesus answered that question. The most important thing is loving God. And then he threw in for free, basically, he said, and the second most important thing is to love other people as much as you love yourself. Now, that's an important idea, and there's lots of important things to think about in that. Number one is that instead of being entirely self-centered, we need to be equally others-centered. In other words, Jesus said, love others as much as you love yourself. Right? What does that tell us? Number one, it's not wrong to love yourself. It's not wrong to love yourself. It's not wrong to be what we call in psychology self-interested. That's built into us. It's part of our instinctive survival nature. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're thirsty, you drink. When you're tired, you rest. When you're cold, you try to get warm. When you're too hot, you try to cool off, right? When you're lonely, you seek out the company of other people. Those are all things that show self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. That we wouldn't survive very long if we weren't self-interested. You have to be self-interested, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to learn to manage that, because while you love yourself, you can't only love yourself or love yourself more than you love everything else and everybody else, so that you are completely self-absorbed and narcissistic. That's bad. Okay, and that's a characteristic of the generations that exist today. They're very, very narcissistic and self-absorbed. They think they should come first and that they are more important than anything else, and what they want, it matters more than anything else. I mean, it doesn't. That's really a bad way to live. It's really a bad way to live. You can't love properly and be loved in a healthy way if you are more important than anything else. Okay, narcissism gets in the way of good emotional health and good relationships. So you have to learn to manage your self-interest. You have to maintain balance. You see, there's nothing wrong with self-love, but it can't be the primary thing. It can't be more important than anything else. Well, what else is equally important? Other people. You see, you have to love God more than anything else, is love God, and then love other people as much as you love yourself. How do you love other people? Sometimes you don't like other people, so how do you love other people? Well, the idea of love, the word for the greatest kind of love in the New Testament is agape, and it means, treating people with respect, giving them what they need, what they deserve, right? Is somebody need help with something, then help them. If they're thirsty, give them a drink. If they're hungry, give them some food. Be considerate of their needs and love them and help them. You can't like everybody. You can't be friends with everybody, okay? But you can love everybody in the true sense of the word. You value them as a human being, and you respect them as a human being, and you help them in whatever way you can help them. And sometimes that means that you make a sacrifice for yourself. You sacrifice something in order to be able to help someone else, to love someone else, to care about someone else, to do for them what they need you to do for them. See, that's what loving other people is about. So when Jesus was asked, what's the most important thing there is? His answer was, the most important thing is love God with your entire being, everything about you, everything that you are. Love God with all of that. And then the second thing is love other people as much as you love yourself, which means you're going to be kind to them, you're going to be forgiving of them, you're going to be compassionate and merciful toward them, you're going to make sacrifices to some degree to help them or to benefit them in some way. You're going to do for other people all the same kinds of things you would do for yourself because you love them just as much as you love yourself. See, one of the things about Christianity is that it says you need to get outside of yourself. There's other things more important than you. Satan lies to you and says, no, you are more important than anything else. God says, no, you're not. There are other things more important than you, and there are other things equally important as you or to you. So you need to be aware of those things. And that's one of the main differences between Christianity and what you hear taught out in the world. The world and Satan says, put yourself first. Christianity says, no, put God first. And then put others on an equal footing with yourself. That's the most important command. That's the basis for everything else in Christianity, is loving God and then loving others as much as you love yourself. Those are foundational ideas. And if you start to build a life based on those two things, then your life will change for the better. You'll be happier, you'll be healthier, things will go well for you. That's not to say you won't have any issues or problems. Of course you will. You'll have to solve those. But by putting God first, you have a better relationship with God, then it's going to be easier to deal with the challenges of life. Well, those are my thoughts for the day. I hope you found them helpful and encouraging. Didn't mean to offend anyone. If I did, I'm sorry, but what I said was true. So the truth is what has to be said, whether it makes people angry or not. I hope it didn't. I hope this was helpful. So, as always, read your Bible, pray, go to church, and may God bless.